Hi, my name is Lori Milliken, and this lecture is about experimental research. What is experimental research? Well, we've talked about descriptive research already, and descriptive research describes the status of something. In contrast, experimental research is a little bit different. Experimental research is used to try to prove cause and effect. So if you remember, we talked about correlation coefficients in the analysis where we try to look at associations between two variables. And one of the things that I want you to remember about a correlation is that it cannot prove causation. So just because two variables happen to be related to one another does not mean that one causes the other. And so you cannot prove causation by a correlation. The role of experimental research is to prove that cause and effect relationship. So what happens is an intervention is typically applied, and we want to test the effectiveness of that intervention. Now, the intervention could be a drug that's given to a group of people. It could be a process that's applied. It could be an exercise training session or a program. Some intervention is applied to a group of people. Now, for comparison, there has to be a group of people who do not get that intervention. They are the control group, or sometimes called the placebo group. Sometimes they are the usual care group. And that's the group that is not getting the intervention, and they are the comparison group. Now, in an experiment, you want to try to minimize bias and eliminate confounding factors. So you want to try to reduce the impact of extraneous variables. And these are variables that might have an impact on whatever you're trying to measure, the outcome, that is not related to the intervention being applied. So these are extraneous variables, and you want to reduce their impact. So we minimize bias and confounding factors, and we try to eliminate the impact of extraneous variables so that the only thing that's left is this comparison between intervention and control groups. So a study is designed so that this treatment or intervention can be tested, and the researcher is sure that whatever results occur are solely due to that treatment. So this is after you eliminate confounders and remove bias, limit the effect of extraneous variables. So the researcher will select a population that will be targeted. Sometimes the population actually relates to the topic being researched. For example, a lot of research on osteoporosis ends up being done in postmenopausal women because those are the people who are affected by osteoporosis. Sometimes osteoporosis research is actually done in young populations to see if you can maximize bone density. So to some extent the population relates to the topic being studied. The researcher also determines how many people will be needed to show the desired effect, if it actually does exist. And so this relates back to the statistical significance and statistical power lectures way at the beginning of the course. So how many people will it take to see the effect if it does exist? And so that number of people are recruited. And then the researcher will randomly assign those people to certain groups or conditions depending on what the study design is. So this random assignment ends up being really important because when you randomly assign groups of people to the different treatment groups, hopefully you've eliminated some bias or you've eliminated some confounding factors. A strong research design usually uses random assignment. If people are allowed to choose their own groups, there might be some bias there, and so typically that's not done. So then when all is said and done, these studies will require that groups are being compared to each other. And these are groups that have received different treatments, or they're exposed to a different condition. And so if you want to answer the question, did this intervention work, you're going to compare the group that got the intervention to the group that did not get the intervention. And that's how you tell if the intervention actually did anything. And there are many different scenarios for how studies can be designed, and so there are many, many analytical approaches. In this class, we are going to focus on two basic sets of analyses. These are going to be t-tests and ANOVAs, and ANOVA stands for Analysis of Variance.